Hello, welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. Okay, so it's time to put in the calabrese or the green broccoli, and what I've done here is basically I've dug the ground over. I'm inside the tunnel. I've dug the ground over and got all the weeds out, and what I've done is I've walked all over the ground again to firm it down, raked it all level, and now I'm ready to put them in. So as you can see, I've already put in a few, so I'll just show you putting in the last few so you know what to do. Okay, so I actually watered these last night, but they are a little bit dry, to be honest with you, but basically what I do is I plant them reasonably close together, and what I find is you know, they will support each other that way. So you can plant them a bit further apart, but as you can see, these are about sort of 12 to 14 inches apart. The plants are around 9 inches tall now. Well, basically all you need to do, these square pots, just push the bottom of that's basically fallen out. As you can see, there's a really good root on there, and what I do basically is just dig the hole out there. As I say, I've already firmed the ground down, but it's been dug over this morning, so it is reasonably sort of loose anyway. And what I tend to do is bury them a little bit deeper than they are in the pot, about an inch or so. So I'll just do the next one here and one here. So basically I'm planting one, then two. I've only got a line in the middle just to see where the middle one needs to go. Then obviously I'm planting either side of that line with the other two. You'll see good rootstock on there. As I say, just plant them a little bit lower than they were in the pot, give them a really good firm down. And what you can actually do is put your foot either side if you're not quite as heavy as me, but I can just push them in by hand. So bob them in the hole, make sure that there's no sort of air pockets around them. Push that down like that, and then I'm on to the next one. So one in the middle. Obviously if you have got any sort of weeds coming through, now's a good time to pull them out as well. So make sure you've got no stones around. I'll just break the soil around and just bob them in like that, nice and firm. Make sure that the ground's nice and level round. And you just continue to do this along the side. If you are planting these out in the open ground, what I do suggest, if you haven't got a tunnel like I've got here, young fresh plants like this are very attractive to pigeons, and they will tend to eat the plants if you're not careful. So this is exactly why I've got the tunnels, to stop pigeons and rabbits and stuff like that from eating them. So if you have got rabbits or pigeons or anything like that, what I suggest you do is put some net over your plants, because they will most certainly be attacked if you're not careful. So as you can see there, I'm just sort of pushing them down, making sure that the ground's nice and firm round. And as you can see, it's a reasonably quick job to do this. And don't forget to plant them slightly deeper. The reason I do that is brassicas have got this tendency, most certainly broccoli, they've got a tendency of kind of flopping over. Now, the reason why I'm planting them this close together is as they grow, they will support each other as they're getting a bit larger. I mean, these plants are going to end up being something in the region of about 3 to 4 foot high, and at that point they do tend to get a little bit top heavy and can topple over. So the ones on the side here will be supported by the inside of the tunnel. If you're on an exposed area and you know, you do get a bit of wind, what you might want to do is either shield them from the wind, or actually potentially stake the plants just to keep them upright, because they will topple if you're not careful. But I plant them about an inch or two below the ground, as I say, and what that will do is just give the plant that little bit more extra support. Now as soon as all of these are planted, they'll need a really good watering in, and then they should be good then for a few weeks. Obviously keep your eye on them. Any young plants like this, you need to make sure before they get the roots into the ground properly, to you know, to keep them watered so they don't dry out on you. And also as well, whilst you're planting them, even though I haven't here, it's a good idea to put a bit of lime on the ground, because brassicas do like lime in the soil, and it also helps to combat club root and stuff like that. So that's putting the brassicas in. So, I'd just like to do the question time. Sorry that I haven't got back to everybody in writing, because I've been quite busy this week. But what I'll do is I'll give you a sort of quick update to your questions now. And when I get 5 minutes, I'll go back and respond to you all in writing. So, just very quickly, the first one comes from Nigel from Muddy Boots over in Wolverhampton. And he said, I haven't seen you planting any cauliflower or cabbage. Well, the brassicas that I grow is obviously, I grow kale, and I grow broccoli and calabrese, the green and the purple. I don't tend to grow cabbage because my family don't like cabbage very much. They will eat sort of kale and stuff like that, but they don't particularly like cabbage. And in all honesty, I've grown cauliflower quite a few times in the past, and I've had kind of mixed results. And I do get a problem with sort of little black beetles, and I get problems with sort of mould and stuff forming on the top. So because of that, I tend to shy away from growing it. And to be honest with you, it's quite cheap to grow in the you know, sort of cheap to buy in the shops. So what I tend to do is buy cauliflower. I don't tend to grow it, and cabbage we just don't eat, so that's why I don't grow them. The next one's from Ken Fuller, and he's saying heating your greenhouse, germination, stuff like that. And he was saying he couldn't believe that I'd got all of this to germinate without any heating. To be honest with you, Ken, the key is the location of this greenhouse, because it's south facing, and I've got no trees or anything like that. I really do gain the benefit of the sun now. This greenhouse, even though it's been even though it's reasonably cool outside today, it's actually 22 degrees in here, and that's with absolutely no heating, as you know. If you can get your greenhouse in a position where you've got sunlight all day long, so obviously the sun rises over there, goes round and goes over the back there, you know, you do really benefit from the heat that you gain from that. And so with your sort of greenhouse, it's all about location. If you can get it south facing, where there's no trees shading it or anything like that, you really will, you know, sort of will gain the benefit. Obviously, the one thing that I do get here is quite a lot of wind, so obviously that, you know, there is a wind chill factor from that. So if you can get a sheltered spot where there's not much wind, where you've got the sun all day, you really don't need heating. A few of the people who live close by here, on the allotment, etc., they do put polythene inside the greenhouse at this time of year. I typically don't bother. I have in the past, not here in my other greenhouse, to sort of retain the heat. But that's kind of a double-edged sword. What you can do is sort of prevent the sunlight coming in, so your plants don't get the right amount of sunlight. And also, it does retain the heat, but it's harder for the heat to get in. I find the best combination is just to leave it just the glass. You know, shut your windows up at night, and you know, sort of keep them open in the day, so you get rid of the moisture. I haven't quite opened these yet, so you can see there's a bit of condensation on the windows, but that's the key basically. And all you need to do is look out for you know, if we're going to get a frost, and that's when you need to get your you know, your pitcher pots with a candle inside, and that's more than enough just to keep the greenhouse from freezing. What I typically do is there's quite a few people do this. Basically, just get what I do is get a marley tile, which is the you know, the pan tile, thick sort of concrete roof tiles. I get one of them, put a candle on top of that, and then I put with some little sort of spaces underneath, just a bit of broken crock or something like that. Put a small pitcher pot on top of that with the hole blocked off.
with the hole not blocked off, and then put a larger pitcher pot over the top of that with some more, so you can get the air underneath, so there's air for the candle to burn, and then just block the top off with a another piece of pitcher. I have shown this in previous videos. Put that somewhere in the middle of the greenhouse, and put it low as well. Obviously, heat rises, so you want to keep it sort of low down, so everything gets warmed up, and that's more than enough. The other trick that I do, to be honest with you, which is a Victorian trick, is grass cuttings are a marvellous thing. When you're doing your borders, particularly when you're about to put your tomatoes and more particularly cucumbers, what you want to do is, as I've explained in previous episodes, dig your borders out and then put about, if you can, about 6 inches of grass cuttings underneath the border, and then put your new soil and your sort of compost on top of that, and plant into that. And what this does is, when the grass decomposes, when the bacteria is in there, sort of eating all the grass and stuff like that. Grass is obviously very high in nitrogen, so the bacteria's got all that it needs to sort of breed and multiply and sort of break all the grass down. And when they do this, it generates heat. So the best way you can grow cucumbers and tomatoes, I believe, from experience, is to put in about 6 inches of cuttings off your lawn. As soon as you cut your lawn, put all of those into the bottom of the bed, and then put the soil back on top of that. As that breaks down, obviously it'll break down into, it's probably about 1 inch or something by the time it's finished. But what you'll always see is, when I plant my borders, they're always pretty close to the top, within an inch or so, or 2 inches at the top. And by the end of the year, that's gone down by about 4 or 5 inches. That's because the grasses and the muck that I put in there is sort of broken down. But that's another really good trick to save you a lot of money. Put grass cuttings in. As they break down, it generates a lot of heat, and that'll keep the roots warm, and obviously the rest of the greenhouse, of your tomatoes and your cucumbers, and you'll get really good growth doing that. So that's the best tip I can give you. But as you've seen this year, I have spent no money whatsoever on buying paraffin or electric or anything like that to heat the greenhouse, and I've done all of this without any of that. So it's possible. And I'm in the sort of the Midlands of the West Midlands of England, so it's not particularly warm here. Obviously, if you're slightly further north, in Britain, or whichever part of the world you're in, possibly you will need some heating there. But most certainly here, I don't believe that you need to do it unless it freezes. Then you need to you need to get some candles or wherever going. The next one's from Rockabilly50, and he says, what am I doing with the metal tubes that are outside at the moment? What I'm going to do with those is, I'm following Mark Davison. What I'm going to do is grow some potatoes in those. Now, I've got the final 3 rows of potatoes in now, so what I'm going to do is put them on the end of one row, and I'm going to grow a potato in those tubes, to see the difference between growing them in tubes and growing them in the ground, just to see the sort of the benefit of the two. So that's what those metal tubes are for. I'll be doing that in the next sort of couple of episodes, to be honest with you. The next one's from Bill's Allotment, and he was saying he's noticed a lot of people's on people's videos, a lot of the compost is turning green and stuff. And to be honest with you, Bill, I've also seen this. Now, when you get green on top of the soil, it's typically a sign of overwatering. You've got too much water in the plants, and basically you're getting algae growing on the top. Now, I don't think it's down to the compost, to be honest with you. I don't think the compost is any different this year than it has been in the past. What I do believe it is I've looked at my water butts, and I think there's a reasonable amount of algae in the water butts at the moment. Now, because of the warm, sunny weather that we've had, I think that the algae's bloomed in the water butts and stuff like that, more so than it would have done in previous years. And I think when you watering your plants, there's algae in the water, and obviously that's growing on the top. So that's what I think it is. But having said that, it's not really causing a problem. No plants are suffering because of it, so I shouldn't worry about it too much. But yes, you are right. I've seen this sort of green sort of hue over the top of the pots, which I haven't seen in previous years. For germination, really, I don't think the germination's any different this year than it has been in the past. Because he was saying, is this causing a problem with germination? I don't believe so. I've had the The kale has been a bit funny. Only half of that germinated, which, you know, I've put in a second batch. The second batch is doing really well. So that's the, you know, I've basically had no misses there at all. So, you know, all of those have grown, and that's the Nero that I put in the first one. I've got another one just the same as that. So that's doing quite well. To be honest with you, the sweet corn doesn't seem to be anywhere near as good as it normally is. I've only had probably about 20% of that germinate so far, but that's only been in a week or so, so there's time for that yet. But I don't think the germination really is particularly less than it has been, you know, sort of in previous years. I don't know, maybe other people have found different, but I think the germination's been pretty good this year, to be honest with you. Well, at least noticeably worse than other years. So the next one comes from Nigel at Muddy Boots again, and he was saying the ginger that I put in the tub, where did I get it from? Well, to be honest with you, Nigel, I bought it from a supermarket. It's the ginger that you're going to eat. I looked in various garden centres and stuff like that, couldn't find it anywhere, so I thought, bloody, I'm just going to buy some from a supermarket. It's the first time I've grown ginger, so it's only an experiment really. If nothing happens, nothing happens. I'll just put another tomato plant into something like that. But I just bought it from, I think it was Asda I bought it from, to be honest with you, or Tesco's. And what I did is I got the ginger, and rather than putting it in the fridge, I left it on the windowsill till the little sprouts came, started to show on the side. As soon as that happened, I put them in the pot as you saw on the video. So that's all I did basically. If it grows or not, I don't know, but as I say, it's an experiment. I've not lost anything. And he was also saying about the comment that I said about eating the peas, and you know, when my kids go down and, you know, sort of help themselves off the peas. And what I also do as well with the peas is I typically pick sort of 5 or 6 pods for each of them and put them in the sandwiches for the school. So you know, they tend to take them to school and eat them at school, which is a really good thing. But yeah, peas are always best eaten straight off the plant. Literally go to the plant and eat them there and then. That's the best way to eat peas. And as I explained in the last video, peas are most certainly the best vegetable to eat. They are absolutely jam-packed full of all sorts of nutrients, vitamins and goodness. And the best way to get that is straight off the plant. So don't bother cooking them, you're killing all the vitamins. Eat it straight off the plant, that's the best thing to do. The next one comes from 3 people have sent me very similar comments. Ken Fuller, Grumpy Poo and Shannon Robinson. Thank you to all 3 of you who identified the problem that I'd got, or the insect that was on the hydrangeas. And yes, it is, you're right, I've had a look on your links. Thank you very much, that's exactly what it is. It's the hydrangea scale bug. Unfortunately, I think the 2 that were affected I've lost. As I say, you know, these were cuttings that I took at the back end of last year, and seemingly the 2 that had got these scaly bugs on, I think they've died, to be honest with you. I was pretty sure they died when I was pulling them off, but I thought I'd give them a fighting chance. But I think I'm down to sort of 3 of them now, to be honest with you. But 3 of them are good, so you know, it doesn't cost me anything. But thank you for that, and that's what it was. It was the hydrangea scale bug, and apparently these don't only attack hydrangeas, they also attack all the sort of woody perennials. So you know, sort of keep your eye open for them. But basically, they hide on the underneath of the leaf, and also on the stem, and they suck the plant dry of sap. So you know, sort of keep your eye on them if you do see them. There's no real chemical solution to sort of spray on there. What you basically need to do is get your thumbnail up there and just scrape them off and, you know, squeeze them and kill them, sort of thing. That's really the only way to control them. The next one comes from, again, Shannon Robinson. Thank you for your comment. She was saying spinach. What actually did you grow? I don't grow actual spinach, you're right. You're absolutely right in your observation. I've grown spinach a few times, and to be honest with you, you have to be really careful with spinach. You have to make sure that it's kept watered, and you have to make sure it's kept, you know, so it doesn't go dry, otherwise it bolts. You know, it goes to seed and then you've lost it. So what I always do, I always grow 2 types. If you look at my previous videos, you'll see me doing it. I always grow spinach beet, which is the type with the white sort of stem on the inside, which is kind of like a chard. The next one is perpetual spinach, which has got the thinner sort of stalk in it. And I grow the 2 things together. The reason I grow these 2, for 2 reasons. One, they don't bolt. So you know, if we have a dry period and I don't manage to water them, if I've gone on holiday or if I'm working or whatever, I don't need to worry about them sort of running to seed. And secondly, obviously they'll go through the winter, and you can sort of crop them again in the spring. I don't think normal spinach does that. I think it dies off. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not 100% sure, but I haven't grown normal spinach. But I think for quite a few years now. But I think normal spinach tends to sort of run to seed at the end of the year rather than going through the winter. So that's why I grow perpetual spinach and spinach beet rather than actual spinach. So the next one, Shannon also commented on the fact that her daughters also go and raid the peas and stuff like that, and none of them actually get inside the house, so it's all good. So thank you for your comment, Shannon. The next one's from Mark Davidson. Hi Mark, thanks for your comment. And he was saying, how close do you plant your sweet corn plants? To be honest with you, what you need to do with sweet corn plants is, I think ideally they're about kind of 14 inches apart. Some people might disagree with me and say more like 18 inches. With my sweet corn, I always water it, sort of pretty much every day in the summer whilst it's growing. And I think if you do that, plus if you've got nice rich soil, when you put plenty of compost in and stuff like that, which I have, you can grow them sort of 14 inches apart. I wouldn't put them much closer than that, to be honest with you. And when you're planting the sweet corn, I suggest you plant it a bit further down than it is in the pot, because what you tend to do is, as you'll see as they form, the roots start to come out from above the soil. If you plant a little bit lower, then they're the anchoring roots, if you like, which will sort of hold it in. So plant them nice and low, even if you plant them in a bowl or something like that, in the ground. That's the way I suggest you do it. Always plant sweet corn in a block. Don't plant it in a row because of the pollination. And don't grow it sort of within, I'd say, about 15 yards of a different variety of corn, otherwise you're going to get cross-pollination and it goes all weird. So, but I would say plant them about 14 inches apart. You can go slightly further if you like, but the advantages of growing them that close together is, as they grow, they support each other. So if you get a reasonable amount of wind, they'll sort of support each other from sort of rocking about and sort of falling over. So that's why I grow them about 14 inches apart. I wouldn't go much closer because they have, they're quite hungry, fast-growing plants. And if you plant them much closer, they're kind of fighting for nutrients. So I think 14 inches is about right. That's the way I do it. That keeps them upright, and it also gives them enough room and water and wherever else to grow properly. A lot of people that I know actually grow them sort of 18 inches, 2 foot apart. And you do get possibly a better yield doing that, but they don't support each other. So the people who do grow them sort of 2 foot apart tend to put stakes in and stake them up, and I don't want to go through all that. So what I tend to do is put some corrugated plastic in. You probably saw me last year. Stake that in the ground, which is sort of, I don't know, sort of 3 or 4 foot high. That stops the majority of the wind blowing it about, if you're in a windy position like me. And then just plant them 14 inches apart, and away you go. The next one comes from Tony Carrington. Thanks for your comment, Tony. And he was saying, if people are having such problems with parsnips germinating, why doesn't everybody use F1 hybrid seeds? Because there's a better yield rate. You are right. F1 hybrids does have a better yield, which is probably why the seeds are a bit more expensive. However, having said that, I've used F1 hybrid seeds in the past and they haven't germinated very well. But you are right. You are giving yourself the best chance of germination, if you like, if you use F1 hybrid. So yes, Tony, you are right, and I'd recommend people use that. If you noticed, I've grown 4 different types this year, 4 different seeds, 2 of which are F1 hybrids. The other 2 are just some that I bought from Wilco's, I think, and somewhere else. But yes, F1 hybrids will most definitely give you the best chance of germination. The next one comes from Antonio Pucciauco. Sorry if I've not pronounced your name right. And he was saying about planting tomatoes. You are right. I've done this in the past. I don't typically do it, but what you can do with tomatoes, if you take a sort of typical tomato plant like that, what you can do is you can plant the tomato a little bit deeper than it is in the pot. And what this tends to do is these leaves here kind of turn into roots, or well, not turn into roots as such, but the plant will actually send out roots from where the leaves are, and so you get a plant with more roots. Therefore, it can take in more nutrients and give you better yield. I typically don't do that, but you can actually. I don't know if you can see there, but what a tomato plant will do anyway, if you can see in there, it actually sends out more root from the base anyway. So I do tend to sort of plant it a little bit lower than it is in the pot, but I don't tend to bury the leaves like some people do. But what that will do is it will give you more roots and a better yield. So yes, you can do that. Very quickly, if you're growing your tomatoes at the moment and you've got them in pots still, make sure that these little leaves that you've got at the side, I don't know if you can see that, these little leaves here, make sure you just quickly knock them out, because what you don't want is unless it's a bush variety, what you don't want them is them to be growing into you know, sort of side branches, if you like. So some of your tomatoes, if they're that advanced, will start to have side shoots. Pull them out now, so it concentrates on growing upwards. The next one's from Tony Carrington again. Thank you, Tony. And he was saying to fix a generator onto the wind vanes, and you are right. Funnily enough, somebody came to me last night from one of the people on the allotment here, and they were saying I was actually painting the framework last night, and he says to me, the wind vane was spinning around quite well last night, and he said, why don't you put a generator on that and generate some electricity, then you can use that for, you know, doing something else. And loads of people have actually asked me, and I may well do it, to be honest with you. I am planning to put another wind vane in the middle, quite a large one in fact, which I'm just getting the materials together now, and I'll be building that later this year. That will have a generator on it, but the two that I've got up so far haven't. But I've actually got an alternator, which is off a small petrol engine, which was I believe off a large lawnmower originally, and this alternator will spin round quite easily. Obviously, you know, so it'll spin quite easily with the you know, there's no torque as such on it, but it will generate electricity. What I'm thinking of doing is running that into the greenhouse with a car battery inside the greenhouse, and potentially, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but I may well run some kind of hydroponics next year, so watch this space. But I don't know if it's going to generate enough electricity to run a hydroponic system, but we'll see. But if nothing else, I could potentially charge the battery to make some kind of light in here perhaps, or something like that, I don't know. But it's coming. The two that I've put up so far, I'm unlikely to put a generator on, but the one that's going to go in the middle, which is going to be considerably bigger than the two that I've already made, will have something on it, I can assure you. That's coming up in maybe November, December time this year. But I will be doing that. The last one's from Janice Holland, and she made a quick comment about the fruit trees and how I put some pipe lagging round the tree to you know, to protect the branch against the metal bar that I was tying it against. It's an old trick. I think everybody's probably used this in the past. But if you get a bit of pipe lagging, and to be honest with you, if you go to sort of a lot of hardware stores, pipe lagging's really cheap. It's only I don't know, probably less than £1 for a length, you know, so like a 2 metre length of it, and it's well worth having in your garden. And if you cut that into small sections and put that over the trunk of the tree, and then tie around that to the stake or whatever, that'll actually protect the tree from being sort of knocked about and stuff like that. But don't sort of put too much of it. Only put like, I don't know, 2 or 3 inches of it, because what you don't want to do is sort of hold moisture against the branch, and obviously get the polystyrene stuff, the stuff that water's not going to soak into, and you'll be perfectly good. But yes, it is a good trick. It's not one of my ideas. It's something that, you know, I think I've seen quite a few different people doing over the years. But yes, it stops the bark and stuff on your trees going damaged. So it's a good trick. That's all the questions for this week. Okay, a quick haul video. These Socos is being sold in Aldi at the moment, and these are 50 metres long. Come at a very reasonable price at £6.99. Now, I've seen these in other shops. Wilko's have got one similar, but that's about 16 quid. So at £6.99, it's, you know, it's a really good price. And in the garden centres, you can spend sort of £20–30 on these. Now, this is, as I say, it's 15 metres long, and I'm going to be using these for the watering the potatoes this year. I've actually managed to get 4 of them. And the good thing with these is obviously you know, you sort of plug it into the hose, and rather than the water sprinkling everywhere, what it actually does is it seeps through the hose. It does exactly what it says on the tin, and waters the ground, but not the you know, not the leaves and sort of everything else in the plants. Now, this is important for potatoes because if you water the leaves, you can bring on things like blight and stuff like that. You know, as it's that sort of creates the right conditions for the fungus, which is what blight is, to grow, and that's on the leaves. So the good thing about this is what you can do is just run it along the lines now whilst the potatoes haven't started to grow properly, and just by connecting that up to the hose, what it'll do is it'll you know, sort of deliver water to the ground, but not watering the foliage on the plant. So obviously there are other uses for these. You know, you can put them around borders and stuff like that, but these are ideal for your potato crop, and I'll be putting these round the potatoes in the next few days, so I can start to water the potatoes. So I just wanted to quickly put a note in that Aldi are selling these at the moment. I know it's limited stock, or at least in the store near me, but these are £6.99, and to be honest with you, it's a really good buy at that price. So, thank you for watching this episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. If you do have any questions on anything that we've covered today, please drop a comment or question below, and I'll always get back to you. And I'll see you on the next episode of Jim's Allotment Garden.